Thank you for that. So what you saw there is a sea glider, essentially a vehicle or a vessel, if you were to call it, that float, follows, and flies. It starts on its hull, and at about 5 to 10 nautical miles, it lifts onto its foils, and from there it takes off, flying at speeds of up to 180 nautical miles an hour or 300 kilometers an hour. If we if we look at, I guess, the current problems that the country is facing around transport, not just in Auckland, I think it's unfair to just blame Auckland. I think around the country, rails, ferries, aviation, roads, everything is a bit fragile. So our aim in 2022 was to bring a new piece of technology that would help some of those problems. As we can see, the Sea Glider is very agile. We can use it for multi-purposes. Our aim as a starting point is to use it for passengers and cargo, but it can be used for search and rescue, air medical purposes, cargo purposes, and really any other things that the communities need. So we've committed an order book of 25 Sea Gliders with Regent. We've paid our deposits. We're expecting deliveries of the first ones 2026. We've placed order for 15 of the smaller ones that are the 12-seaters and 10 of the larger ones, which are up to 100-seaters. By 2030, once we have all 25 Sea Gliders operating around the country, we anticipate to move up to 6 million passengers and 300 million kgs of cargo. These are some pictures of the full-scale Sea Glider coming to life. So as we speak, it's being placed into the water. By the end of the year, it'll start its testing on floating, foiling, and flying, and into next year, we'll continue its testing. And by the end of next year, it enters commercial production. We've engaged with all the ports up and down the countries, including Auckland Port, and conversations have been very positive. Some of you may have heard in the media, we've, anchored ourselves with Northland because close to Auckland, and it's a community that requires a lot of travel into Auckland, and they've been very supportive on this front. These are examples of route structures. We're not looking at all of them as a starting point, but I think it's fair to say Whangarei, Auckland, Tauranga would be the key. Auckland being the center point, again, moving people into Auckland and out of Auckland. But if you look at the times, from Auckland to Whangarei down in Viaduct, 45 minutes at a cost of $50. Auckland to Tauranga, 45 minutes at a cost of $50 to $60. We don't anticipate this anywhere in the country crossing $100 per ticket. It's also fair to say we've had some conversations with Auckland Council around some of the more local routes, be it the Wahiki Island, Great Barrier, Whangaparoa, Gulf Harbor. And those are routes we'll continue to look into as well, but we welcome any input from all of you here today as well. Sea Gliders, just to be clear, are regulated by Maritime. We've got a sister company, Air Napier, where we deal with civil aviation. But as anything that flies under 500 feet, IMO and ICAO reached an agreement that will be regulated by Maritime. Maritime have been very supportive. They've actually sent a team out to the States last year to visit Regent. And they're working closely with us around the safety case and the operational case. These are some of the partnerships that we have been lucky enough to head up over the last 12 to 18 months, and they've all been very crucial to our success so far. Met Service, Met Ocean, Maritime obviously as the key regulator, Northport, Northland Inc., and we're hoping that after today we can build some more formal relationships with Auckland Council, seeing as Auckland is the biggest market, and it's fair to say it'll help Auckland a lot. We inked a deal with Monty last month where they've agreed to fund the first 15 Sea Gliders. So once we start receiving delivery mid 26, we should start operating these. These are some of the other key players in the industry that have signed up with Regent, so we're not alone. It's the likes of Japan Airlines, Hawaiian, Lockheed Martin, some big names. And I think this is the new way of doing transport. We've got a solid governance board. Some of them are local, some of them are overseas, but that bring a wide breadth of knowledge. Please feel free to follow us. And at the end, I'd like to say why we are here today is we'd love to engage in conversations with you and the wider team around getting some space, ideally at the White Cloud, because we see that as the central point where we can operate in and out of. And also being part of the wider public transport system, being part of the AT Hop Card or any other, opportunities that you see for us. We're happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. That's an excellent presentation. And book me in on that 20-minute trip to Great Barrier for $35. I'll be your first passenger on that one. That's okay. We've got time for a couple of quick questions. Councillor Hills and Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it looks pretty cool, but I guess how do you see this operating as public transport? Because this is this is a tourist opportunity, this is not public transport. How many people are in one?
I guess to answer your question with frankness, I'm not aware of the official definition of public transport, but I see public transport as anything that's moving people between point A and point B, whether it's for healthcare purposes, education, work, or any other purposes. We do know out of Whangarei, there's a lot of people who travel to Auckland on a daily basis and they struggle with Air New Zealand or driving for 3 or 4 hours. So we may not fit the wider definition of public transport, but I do see that this can help public.
Okay, and I guess so you're looking to, if you would want access to the ferry basin, and so how many people per vessel and how many times a day would you be wanting access?
So this is going to be high frequency. We're looking at every half an hour to 45 minutes of flight, either coming into Auckland or leaving Auckland. Smaller one can take up to 12 people, and the larger one will have the ability to take up to 100 people.
Okay, Councillor Walker?
Yeah, the question I've got is around the impact on marine mammals. So, for example, we've got a whale, the Bruder's whale, that has pods in the Gulf. If you've got 5 to 10 k's approaching 300 k's an hour, it's going to be pretty difficult for something to get out of the way. So, is that something you're working on?
Totally, because we too are conscious of marine mammals, and nobody wants to hit one for the safety of the machine and its passengers and for the well-being of the mammals. So there's two ways to mitigate that risk. One is that the machine itself has passive acoustics on board to understand where there are marine mammals making noises. And we have engaged with the Styles group living down in Parnell Rise, who are keen in putting in static buoys along the line of where we would be foiling it at reasonable speed, so that you can get a real-time feed to the pilots of these machines to understand where mammals might be, and either take off early, and therefore once airborne you're not going to be a risk to the mammal, or manoeuvre to avoid where they are.
Okay, thank you very much, gentlemen. As far as the public transport goes, worth reiterating the point that Shah and his team have engaged with some of the communities on the outer harbour runs, where the 100-seater, for instance, would be a very good fit for the numbers that are currently coming through, especially with an increased frequency. So, Barry Potter has taken up the request, Shah and John, in respect of your ask for engagement with the council, so he'll follow up on that and liaise with you. We have a resolution to receive and thank Shah and John for the presentation. It is moved by Councillor Simpson, seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour? Great, carried. Thanks, very good, guys. A really exciting technology there. And I'm serious about that Great Barrier trip too, honestly.
I'll note it down. Thank you very much for your time, everyone. Absolutely.
Okay, so that brings us to the third item on public input today, and it comes from Break, the road safety charity, and they are going, we're welcome to the front Caroline Perry, the New Zealand director, and Caroline has 5 minutes to talk to us about the safe speed limits as they apply to Auckland. Welcome, Caroline.
Thank you, Chair. Tēnā koutou katoa. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. As mentioned, I'm Caroline Perry and I'm the NZ Director of Break. For anyone who's not come across us before, If anyone who's not come across this before, Break's a national road safety charity that works to prevent road deaths and injuries, to make communities safer for everyone, and to care for families who've been bereaved and injured in road crashes. We support the safe system approach to road safety, which acknowledges that humans make mistakes and that takes a whole of transport system approach, including safe speeds, to improve safety and reduce road trauma. As an organisation, we support a lot of bereaved and injured people from crashes, and we see the devastating and long-term consequences that they have. This is Michelle, who's one of our volunteers, and she kindly gave me permission to share her story with you today. Back in 2013, Michelle was crossing Mount Eden Road when she was hit by a car. She suffered multiple fractures, including to her back, and underwent major surgery following the crash. Fast forward 11 years to 2024, Michelle has since undergone several more surgeries, including another major surgery last year, all because of injuries sustained in the crash. She still undergoes regular physiotherapy and pain management treatments. She's on ACC, and she will be for the rest of her life. The crash in which Michelle was seriously injured was not the result of a reckless driver, of someone being impaired by alcohol or drugs or talking on the phone, though there are obviously many crashes that are caused by those. But it was the result of someone who made a mistake. So I'm sharing her story to highlight both the long-term impact that crashes have on people in our communities, on our overburdened health system, and on our economy, and also to show that crashes don't always involve reckless behaviour. In fact, around 2/3 of crashes in Auckland occur because someone made a mistake. Safe speed limits are proven to help reduce road harm, and particularly to help protect our most vulnerable road users. An International Transport Forum report looked at speed limits across 10 countries and found a pattern. Where speed limits were lowered, the severity and frequency of crashes decreased. Where speeds were increased, so too did the severity and frequency of crashes. We're concerned that the draft speed limit rule doesn't allow for new 30 limits in communities, despite the wealth of evidence about the benefits of them. There's a significant difference in the impact and survivability of a crash at 30 kilometres an hour compared to 50 kilometres an hour. The blanket reversal of speed limits around schools proposed in the draft rule doesn't take into account the many different school and road environments that there are across Auckland and that have been factored into previous phases of the speed management programme and Katoa Ora, and all of the public consultation that occurred for those. We need safe speeds around schools and in communities throughout the day. 85% of serious crashes that happen around them happen outside normal drop-off and pick-up times. Many schools have facilities that are used before and after school and on weekends. Often there are other community facilities in the area. Permanent safe speed zones around schools can prevent 6 times more deaths and serious injuries compared to variable speed limits. They also help streets to feel safer, encouraging walking and cycling. If parents don't feel it's safe, they'll drive their children to school, putting more traffic on the roads and creating more congestion. We've been conducting a survey with schools. We've been conducting a survey with schools and childcare centres, and these schools gave me permission to share some of their comments with you about the situation around their school. There are schools in high-density neighbourhoods that have children who walk, cycle and scoot from home and want to be able to continue doing so, not just for 150 metres either side of the school gate. There are schools that are split site, with students having to cross the road for lessons, not just at the start and end of the day. There are schools that have people accessing other facilities on their site at all times of the day, such as childcare centres. And this school in South Auckland is on a road that currently has a 50 limit, with a proposal for a variable speed limit under Katoa Ora, and various safety features that have been implemented outside the school. Prior to 2020, however, this road was 100 kilometres an hour. In the last 4 years, this area has seen significant change and development, yet under the draft rule, this road could revert to 100. Auckland has changed a lot in the last 4 years, and it will continue to change, so we need speed limits that match our road conditions. And I focused on children because children in particular are at risk. We all make mistakes, including them. Their brains are still developing. They're unable to assess risk in the same way that we as adults can. They're unable to accurately judge the speed of traffic going over 30 kilometres an hour, so they may think it's safe to cross when it isn't. And if they're hit by a vehicle, they suffer different damage to adults. As adults, we're more likely to suffer lower body injuries, but children are more likely to suffer serious head and neck injuries because of where the impact is. So in conclusion, my key points are we need to keep lower speed limits around schools and in communities and be able to implement more 30-kilometre-an-hour limits. And we need to be able to match speed limits to the road conditions across our entire network. This will result not only in safety benefits, but also health, environment and economic benefits for all. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Caroline, for your presentation. A couple of quick questions. Councillor Dalton.
Thank you, Caroline, for your presentation and for all the work you do, and today for having the voice of our children. So there's been some debate around the time it takes to get to places now that the speed limits are lowered. Have you done any work on what that extra time is over a 20-minute journey?
So for the average journey in Auckland, it's a matter of seconds. So you're only talking a lot of journeys, maybe 15 seconds, if that, in terms of a difference in journey time. And I'm sure there are others. I don't have the exact figures here with me, but they are available. So it makes a really small difference in terms of travel time. And we know that in terms of congestion, what really makes a difference to congestion are intersections and the amount of traffic on the road. So if we encourage more people and enable people to walk, cycle to school with their children, if we enable people to use public transport, we can reduce congestion that way.
You make an excellent point. 14.2 seconds,
Thank you.
or perhaps 12 seconds under the Minister's recommendation, which is a gaining of 2.2 seconds, but a lot more deaths. Thank you for that.
Councillor Bartley.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for lateness. Thank you for what you're doing. How frustrating is it when you see these changes coming through that are proposed and that are all about pushing more speed, and yet you can see the damage that it's going to cause, especially to the most vulnerable, being our children? Must be really hard, and please, God, don't stop what you're doing. We need your voice.
Thank you. And yes, you nailed it there in terms that it is very frustrating, but also for us as an organisation that supports people who've been affected by crashes and sees the consequences, the fact that we are putting at risk more people and we are going to be likely dealing with more people who are killed or seriously injured and more families being put in that situation is heartbreaking for those families as well. So that is why we are pushing as much as we can to look at the evidence, because the evidence really shows, and there is a wealth of evidence both from here and around the world about the difference that lower speed limits make.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you for that. We have a couple of other presenters here, so we'll pick up some of the other questions. So we'll just keep it at two per presenter, I think. I've tried to do it with the other ones. So, Councillor Dalton, would you like to move the motion of thanks to Caroline, and seconded by Councillor Bartley? All those in favour? Against? Okay, thank you, Caroline, and you know that there'll be a item, of course, you know, later in the agenda, which brings us up to our fourth presenter today. It's by Auckland, and is also to do with retaining existing safe speeds, and would welcome up Fianne Delifi, the Chief Biking Officer, and she's going to address the committee. Welcome, Fianne.
Kia ora. Yay. Okay, cool. Oh, fantastic. Oh, the old text is on there. That's fantastic. Okay. I don't know if that will get in the way or not. I didn't know it would do that, so hopefully it's all right. Kia ora, I'm Fianne Delifi. My pronouns are they, them, and I'm the Chief Biking Officer for Bike Auckland. Before I start, I just want to quickly request that there's a letter from the Newton Central School Principal, which is in concern of item 10. Can we please also add this to the agenda? Cool.
Yep.
Thank you. So if you haven't met Bike Auckland before, we're a non-profit and we're all about reducing barriers to cycling for transport so that anyone who wants to can choose to cycle from A to B. We're really big on inclusivity, and that means all the diverse array of bike types that are out there and the diverse array of riders. So I want to just bring it to your attention that 1 in 3 Aucklanders do not drive. They're getting around in other ways. And some of these people, and some of the people that are driving right now would find that a bike is their best mode of transport if our roads were safe and accessible. This is me, this is my bike. My bike is my mobility aid sometimes. I have a joint condition and sometimes it's really painful for me to walk, but I can still cycle to where I need to go, giving me freedom, keeping me active, and keeping me engaged in life. There are lots of people like me who find trouble with walking, but can have a more active and independent life with a bike. If our streets make it accessible to them to ride for their transport. So the vision of the Aotearoa New Zealand Disability Strategy is that New Zealand is a non-disabling society, a place where disabled people have an equal opportunity to achieve their goals and aspirations, and all of New Zealand works together to make this happen. And a key part of that is having a non-disabling accessible transport network. The network that we have right now is not accessible. It's an inaccessible transport network. And this means that some people are forced to stay home instead of completing their journeys. This increases loneliness, depression, and it means that they have fewer work options because they can't reliably get to work. And that, of course, has an effect on the people around them as well. If we made our transport system more accessible, including being accessible to ride a bike, some of these people would be able to work more. They would have better mental health outcomes. They would be able to complete their journeys. And their friends, whānau, and caregivers may be able to jump on bikes as well. So a key way to do that is to make our streets safer, to make our streets feel safer as well. So 30 Ks is this magical number, which, as you just heard, is really important for safety, but it's also really important for feeling safer and more attractive. It's quieter, the traffic noise quietens down, so it becomes a lot more pleasant and attractive to walk and cycle. And we see this across Tāmeki Makaurau. So in areas where the speed has been lowered to 30 Ks as part of the residential speed program, people have found that they feel safer and they've started to walk and cycle more. In Papakura, where that speed was lowered, almost half of the people in that area started to walk and cycle more. So this can be very powerful. So of course, I'm here talking to you because of the land transport rule, which would make us lose the accessibility and safety that we currently have and make it impossible to deliver the future accessibility and safety that we want for our transport network. Bike Auckland urges you to protect the accessibility and safety that we have by opposing the land transport rule so that we can continue to enjoy our existing 30 K speeds and so that we can deliver katoa ka ora, the speed management plan which has been extensively consulted and is overwhelmingly supported by the communities that it directly affects, and so that we can work towards delivering that accessible transport network that we desperately need. Kia ora.
Perfect timing, Fionn. You get the gold star for perfect pitch. Do we have some questions for Fionn? Councillor Hills, Councillor Henderson.
Good. Thank you, Chair, and thank you so much for the work you do and the organisation. I guess for me, a question would be on the consultation. So the blanket speed rule that we keep getting told was blanket.
Yes.
From your understanding, was it blanket or was it consultation for every community?
So what we saw as Bike Auckland was that as the speeds were changed, they were individually consulted, and the ones that have been kept have been overwhelmingly supported and had really strong positive effects for their communities. It was not a blanket speed level change, but this rule would be a blanket speed level change back up. So although it wasn't a blanket change when it was lowered and made safe, it would be a blanket level change to reverse them.
Thank you. And just last question. I was going to ask a question to the last speaker, but with your organisation, I know you feel it hard when someone is killed or hurt
Yeah.
in a cycling accident, what goes through the community or your groups? What is the ripple effect when that happens? Because it happens quite often in the city.
Yeah, so if someone is seriously injured or dies on a bike on our streets, our core team feels it very, very strongly. It's absolutely heartbreaking. And if we can get in touch with the families and get their permission, we often arrange a memorial ride near the area where they were killed. And the turnout for those is a really high turnout. It's like 80 to 100 people who haven't met this person before because they feel it so strongly that someone else who rides a bike around our city has been killed just trying to get to where they want to go. And it's heartbreaking. And some people find that they really struggle to cycle after they hear about those sorts of horrible tragedies, yeah.
Councillor Henderson?
Thank you, Chair. Just to sort of really drill down on it, because one of the elements we have to feedback on is around variable speed limits around schools. So can I just confirm, does your group oppose the variable limits proposal?
Absolutely. So obviously having a variable limit is better than no safe speed at all. But the permanent speed changes are crucial. As you heard in Brake's presentation, 85% of the serious injuries and deaths on the roads immediately outside schools are at times that wouldn't be covered by the variable speed limits. And children are using the school streets at all hours of the day. And there's other people using those streets as well. It's not just kids getting to school. It's people like me trying to get to work or the shops. And that's also really important.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Henderson, would you like to move the motion of thanks to Fionn? Moved by Councillor Henderson, seconded by Councillor Hills. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you very much, Fionn, for your presentation, which brings us through to our final presenters for today in public input. It's from the Australasian College of Road Safety, and we'll also be speaking to the new speed limits rule. We welcome Paul Durden and Dr. Hamish Mackey, who will be doing the presenting today. Oh, not both, just one. Welcome. Oh, we've got Paul online. Great.
Well, kia ora everyone. Thanks for having us here. As you say, I've got Paul online. We're here from the Australasian College of Road Safety. I'm Dr. Hamish Mackey. Sorry, I'm just going to make sure this works. I'm a committee member of the New Zealand chapter, and Paul will introduce himself shortly. I'm a transport researcher. I've been working in the transport sector, including road safety and other parts, for the last 20 years. So, Paul, do you want to introduce yourself and carry on?
Thank you, Hamish. Yes, hi everyone, and thanks for the opportunity today. My name is Paul Durden. I'm a technical director with ABLI. I'm based in Christchurch, and I'm also the co-chair of the New Zealand chapter of the College of Road Safety. So the college is the region's peak membership association for road safety. There are nearly 1,000 members throughout Australasia and beyond that are members, and it includes experts in all areas of road safety, from policymakers, health and transport professionals, academics and the like. The purpose of the college is to support the members in their efforts to eliminate serious road trauma through knowledge sharing, professional development, networking and advocacy. The college has a vision which is the elimination of fatal and serious injury for all road users. In terms of chapters and networks, so for each state and territory in Australia, there is a chapter, and there is also a chapter based in New Zealand, which Hamish and I are members of, and on the committee. There are also a number of networks specialising in specific interest areas. The college produces a number of policy statements on particular issues, and has one in relation to speed management. And the principles behind that policy position are shared there on the screen. So at a very high level, the principles that inform the policy are that it's not acceptable for anyone to be killed or seriously injured in the road traffic system, and the system must be made safe for all road users. And because of that, that means that health and safety are far more important outcomes of the system than efficiency or cost. The safe and legal speeds should be obvious to drivers and riders to reduce speed management errors, and that speed limits should be set to match the road function, characteristics and design, and that the strategies should be comprehensive in their scope and not just simply rely on changing a speed limit sign and enforcing it. Hamish, did you want to speak to the next slide?
Okay, so all of that means there are some key points here when it comes to implementing successful speed limits, and I'm just going to run through them here. We need to use survivable speed, so these 30km/h speed limits that we've been implementing are super important. This is the threshold by which above that pedestrians and cyclists will be killed or seriously hurt above that. So there's actually overwhelming evidence globally that implemented 30km/h speed limits in cities is leading to about a 30 to 40% reduction in deaths and serious injuries. This is global evidence. We're starting to see this emerge in evaluations here in New Zealand as well. So correspondingly, if we reverse these 30km/h speed limits, we can expect to see increases in trauma of those sorts of magnitudes. So this is the implications potentially of how we implement the New Zealand speed limits rule. We do need to put them in the right place and make them understandable to people so they look and feel appropriate to people, and that's a really important part of the college's position on speed. So you can sort of see here, this is a village in Auckland. This works really well, and we need to be making sure that the speed limits make sense to people. That's really important. But we also need to do this consistently across the network. It's not only this village, we need other villages to be looking and feeling the same way as well. So we've got a few key issues with the setting of speed limits rule, and Paul's just going to talk through some of these now.
Thank you, Hamish. So yes, as a college, the key issues that we have with the proposed setting of speed limits 2024 is there are several of them. One of which is the need for reversals of speed limits that have been implemented since the 1st of January 2020 on roads that are classified as an urban connector. So they're typically your arterial roads and on some local streets as well. We're also very concerned about the requirement for future speed limit changes to align with defined speed limits and speed limit ranges that are set out in the rule, because those speeds do not align with survivable speed setting principles. So there are examples. There is no provision for 30km/h permanent speeds, like you've implemented on across a lot of Auckland to great success as well. So an example is that it says that any urban street needs to have a speed limit of 50km/h, except where there are high levels of pedestrian or cycling activity, in which case it could be 40. So that's still far higher than what the evidence suggests is necessary. And urban connectors would have a range of 50 to 80km/h. And just very quickly, if you compare a crash that happens at 60km/h to a crash that were to happen, say, at 50 originally, there is a 60% increase in severity of outcome if that involves a pedestrian being hit at 60 compared to 50, and 50% chance for a right angle collision, so like a T-bone type collision, if that just involves vehicles at an intersection. So there are some significant consequences here. Hamish.
Sorry, it's just to finish off, there's a range of implications for Auckland from the setting of speed limits rule. I won't go through them all here, but generally there's going to be, we can see if we implement it as it's written at the moment, an increase in harm on our roads. There's no real evidence that increasing speed limits increases productivity. That's really more about congestion and the number of cars on the road. We do see a couple of positive points about unsealed roads at 60 and 80km/h, and also things like rural intersection speed limits. But overall, the evidence suggests that we need to be improving and building on the current approach as opposed to reversing it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Paul Hamish, for your presentation today. You can take a couple of quick questions from the councillor. Councillor Turner.
Thank you. My question's kind of across all the presenters. I was too late with the previous question. All this, cars don't kill people, people kill people. Speed doesn't kill people, people kill people. I have worked for 40 years at my business premises, which are in a bush-clad rural suburb, directly opposite a primary school. And in those 40 years, and it's still in existence, in those 40 years, I can only think of 3 instances recently boy racers turned up on the intersection and just carried on until they stopped traffic. I got them on my cameras, took it to the police, no action was taken. Then another time, someone who was peed up took out the sign, the lamppost. Luckily, no one was hurt. And then before that, back in 1990, 2 Waitakere City Council trucks, one rolled on the corner because they were racing each other. My point is not that I'm not wanting to look after the people, but we're penalising the good people who aren't your problem, and what are we going to do about the people who are the problem? Because how's the speed going to fix that?
Absolutely, there's extreme behaviours we need to deal with, and we do support in the broader sort of goals of government things like improved increased penalties and things like that. That absolutely needs to be dealt with, don't get me wrong. But we do know that around 2/3 of deaths and serious injuries happen when everyday people just make everyday mistakes. And what we need is a system around them that'll prevent those everyday mistakes from turning into fatalities. And we believe that it's unacceptable that such small errors should lead to people being killed or seriously hurt.
Thank you. So I will just counter by saying 40 years worth of observations doesn't point those statistics to me.
Councillor Dalton?
Thank you for your presentation. I just had a question around the 30 kilometres because I do support what you're saying in terms of the injury or fatality. But there are stretches of road that are 30 that are what look like to be creating a perverse outcome. Is that your experience? And is the answer to lift that back to 40 depending on where that road is? Or is it to try and get through the 30 kilometre perverse outcomes?
I think absolutely we need to, and this is the college's position, that we do need to work hard to make sure that speed limits are sensible and understandable to people. They make sense and they're self-explaining, we sometimes call it. So that's absolutely, and if a road feels very fast and we're posting it at 30 kilometres an hour, then there is a problem that needs to be addressed. And we might need to do something to the road to make it look and feel more like 30, or we might need to think of alternative speed limits. But Paul, do you have anything to add on this?
Oh, look, I just support what you've said there, Hamish. And I think the college's, well, I don't think the college's position is exactly as you've outlined there. And I think some of the issues that are present in the dialogue that is happening at the moment around safe and appropriate speeds is not so much to do with the science behind what the safe and appropriate speeds are, but rather the implementation techniques that have been used. So yes, exactly. If a road doesn't look and feel like it's ready to support 30 kilometres per hour because it's particularly straight and wide, then things need to be implemented there to make sure that it does have those self-explaining characteristics.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you very much, Hamish and Paul, for your presentation today. It's very much appreciated. I'm happy to move the motion of thanks to the Australasian College of Road Safety and seconded by Councillor Fletcher. All those in favour? Against? Okay, thank you, and thank you to all our presenters today. Very high standard of presentation and will no doubt be used in the last 3 items anyway when we get to item 10 later on to do with the speed limits. So that brings us to item 6, which is local board input. There was no local board input on that. So we go on to item 7, extraordinary items, none of there.